Hello, everyone. This is Empowering Democracy. I'm your host, Joe Firestone. This is another Dump the Corruption show. And our topic for tonight is the fundraising of RFK Jr. Okay, so uh, I see there is only one person here yet. I don't yet know who that is. If I had to guess, I'd say it might be Stephen Wolfbrand, but I don't know. Okay, in any case, I'm going to start this with a post is from CNBC. And the headline is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential run gets support from Wall Street veteran Omid Malik. And it was written by Brian Schwartz, published on June 21st, 2023. So it's been around for a while. This has already happened. The bullet points, key points of the article are that Bobby Kennedy, who's known for his powerful family ties and for pushing conspiracy theories, has attracted several rich supporters. I have to point out that the idea that he's been pushing conspiracy theories is contested. In many areas, it's contested. In many areas, of the line that he's been pushing conspiracy theories, is thought to be a smear and not really defended. It's just sort of put forward as if it's common knowledge and that we all ought to accept it. It's a mainstream press kind of smear, which is designed to stop people from looking at him seriously as a candidate for the presidency. Veteran Wall Street executive Omid Malik took Kennedy to a ritzy dinner in Las Vegas that featured Hillary Clinton and Gary Cohn as guests. Kennedy has already enjoyed support from wealthy executives such as Elon Musk, David Sachs, and Chamath Palihapitiya. Palihapitiya, I think I've got that right. There's a picture, of Omid Malik. He's the CEO of the Columbia Acquisition Corporation. He's at the New York Stock Exchange in this picture, taken on June 17th, 2021. And the source of this is the New York Stock Exchange. That is the source of the picture. Robert F. Kennedy Jr., the anti-vaccine activist who's now running for president, has another wealthy backer in his corner. Veteran Wall Street executive, Omid Malik. Last month, Malik took Kennedy to a swanky private dinner at the Bellagio in Las Vegas to rub elbows with an array of political power players, according to people familiar with the matter. The attendees at the dinner, which coincided with the SCALE Global Business Summit, included former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, the chief neocon herself, with Madeleine Albright dead, she's the chief of the neocons, okay, on the Democratic side. Former Trump economic advisor Gary Cohn, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who is probably the chief of the neocons on the Republican side, ex-UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, the chief of the neocons in the UK, former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers, the chief of the neoliberal economists, and Democratic mega donor Mark Lassery, the people said. Many of the attendees were listed as speakers at the summit. A spokeswoman for Cohn confirmed his attendance at the dinner. The gathering included many of the speakers at the summit. Representatives for Kennedy, Clinton, Pompeo, Summers, and Lassery did not return requests for comment about the dinner. A spokesperson for Johnson, Boris Johnson, that is, Bojo, could not be reached. Well, these people said Kennedy didn't pitch himself as a candidate. His attendance at the dinner represents another way to beef up his presence in the political conversation. Excuse me. Despite having publicly pushed numerous conspiracy theories, including debunked takes on vaccines, and there is a link to an article here from this is from NBC News, sister company of CNBC, subsidiary of NBC, of course. And I haven't read that article, but I'll pretty much guess it's a smear of his take, okay, on vaccines. The people declined to be named, too, in order to speak about private conversations and also deliberations. The election was nonetheless on attendees' minds, okay, at the dinner. A person familiar with the matter said there were some, including Clinton, who suggested that President Joe Biden's age could be a hurdle that he'll need to shrug off to voters. So there's an indication that Hillary Clinton is worried about his age and is worried that he may not be able to shrug it off to voters. His polling might fall, or he may in fact be too old to continue, and that it'll be necessary for the Democratic Party to glom on to somebody else. I'd guess that the one that they would most like to glom on to is most probably Gavin Newsom, who I like to refer to as Bobo Newsom, because of the old Yankee relief pitcher Bobo Newsom, who was operating during the 1940s. But anyway, so Clinton also cheered on Biden's tenure as president, said another person. She previously said at a Financial Times event in May that Biden's age is an issue and people have every right to consider it. Biden will turn 82 soon after next year's general election, while former President Donald Trump will be 78 come November 2024. Of course, Hillary's probably thinking of throwing her own hat into the ring, but I don't know, may be the case, but I think her time has passed and that she will prefer to have someone else. I don't think in the end it's going to be Bobby Kennedy. As I say, I think the one they're going to turn to is Gavin Newsom. Kennedy's also gained a little traction in polls, putting him against Biden in the Democratic primary race. We have to remember this was as of June. A June Quinnipiac poll shows Biden with 70% of support among Democrats and Democratic-leaning voters, while Kennedy has 17% in approval among these same groups. I don't think that's right. I think that's probably a poll that dealt with the choice between the two, and that Biden had 70% and Kennedy 17%. I think if you look at the approval ratings of the two, at least as of the end of July, that Kennedy's approval rating is a good deal higher than Joe Biden's by at least 6 points, might even be 10 points, depending upon the poll. Name recognition is likely a part of that. Kennedy is the son of a former Attorney General, Robert F. Kennedy, who was assassinated during his own presidential role in 1968, in case you've been on another planet somewhere and have never heard of this. And the nephew of late President John F. Kennedy, who was shot dead in 1963. Anyway, Malik, meanwhile, joins other rich donors in their support for Kennedy. Venture capitalist David Sachs and fellow tech leader Chamath Palihapitiya hosted a fundraiser for Kennedy this month, back in June, according to a tweet by Palihapitiya. The tweet said that, quote, turnout was amazing, unquote, and attendees were Democrats, Republicans, and Independents. The events raised approximately $500,000 for Kennedy's campaign, according to another person with direct knowledge of the matter. Kennedy was also once a guest on Sachs and Palihapitiya's podcast. Billionaire Twitter owner, well, of course, he's the X owner now because he changed the name of Twitter to X, Elon Musk, hosted Kennedy in a recent Twitter Spaces, where Malik joined the discussion. Musk said last year he was leaning towards backing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for president. He later hosted a glitchy Twitter Spaces for the Florida Republican when he announced his run for president. So Malik has his foot in both camps. He's probably giving money to both sides. So if either one of those guys becomes president, he'll be able to pick up the phone and call them. So Malik gears up to host fundraisers. He will also host a campaign fundraiser for Kennedy in the ritzy Hamptons in July, according to those with direct knowledge of the matter. CNBC has reviewed an invitation to the Sag Harbor gathering. Sag Harbor. The invitation, which does not name Malik, says the event will feature cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, and a dinner featuring a discussion with Kennedy. Tickets for the gathering are going for $6,600, the max an individual donor can give directly to a campaign. Often half goes towards a primary account and the other half goes towards a general election pool of funds. A Malik hosted Hampton's event for DeSantis is also in the works for July. Oh, God. A spokesman for the DeSantis campaign did not return a request for comment. Malik himself has donated to candidates on both sides of the aisle. He gave to DeSantis when he ran for re-election in 2022, as well as Biden's 2020 campaign, and with Donald Trump's failed second run for the White House. According to data from the nonpartisan Open Secrets, Malik worked as a managing director at Bank of America until 2018, before a reported controversy that, according to the New York Post, led to an 8-figure settlement with the firm that he won. Okay, an 8-figure settlement means, of course, that he got more than $10 million out of the settlement. Malik has created his own lane on Wall Street with two firms, 1789 Capital and Farvahar Partners. The Post reported that Malik is launching a new fund through 1789 Capital called EIG, or Entrepreneurship, Innovation, and Growth. Sounds really neoliberal to me. The paper said the $150 million fund is backed by GOP mega donor Rebecca Mercer. So, someone who's connected to the Mercer fortune, which historically has been very right-wing, who helped finance Breitbart and later Cambridge Analytica, and former Republican Arizona Senate candidate Blake Masters, who fortunately lost in his run for the Senate, who used to work for fellow Republican financier Peter Thiel. Okay, I'm getting hello, Dezoris.
Yes, Madeline and I need a link.
Okay, I will provide it to you in just a second. I'm sorry I screwed up again about that.
That's fine.
Okay, folks. So Madeline and Dolores would like to get in here, and I evidently screwed up again and did not provide the link to them. So I will do that right now, and they will be joining us very shortly. Let me get the darn link. Oh, here it is. Could have sworn I put that up, but today was a busy day for me. I was doing this, I was doing that, I was doing the other thing, and I might have forgotten to do that. So here we go. They now have the link, so they should be in just a moment. There's Kay. Hi, Robert. I was going to say hello to everybody while I'm waiting for them. Hey, Kay, how are you? Andy Candy. Hiya, Joe. No, it's just me listening in. Robert Copeland says, hi, everybody. Kay says, hi, Robert. Robert says, well, then, is nobody any good running for president that is a Democrat? So I will be voting for Cornel West. And Madeline, and Dee left a comment. Madeline and I need a link for the show. So, as I say, I believe they will be in here in just a moment. So meanwhile, let me go back to this piece. So I was just saying that this $150 million fund is backed by GOP mega donor Rebecca Mercer. And, of course, telling you about her connections and her contacts. Okay, that's the end of that particular article. So I'm going to summarize that for Dee and for Madeline when they get here, which should be momentarily. But anyway, you see from this article that Bobby Kennedy is getting connected to some very big donors with some very big money. That $150 million fund that's being established, That's really big money. How many candidates it's going to go to, I don't know. They're also not clear in this article whether that fund is a super PAC, okay, or not. It's obvious that Bobby has gotten large contributions already from David Sachs and from Omid from Omid Malik. Uh, and also Shamath Palahapite, Polyhapitia, who hosted a fundraiser for Kennedy back in June. So he already has extremely rich people supporting him, holding fundraisers for him. And Elon Musk hosted Kennedy in a recent Twitter Spaces. And Malik is gearing up for other fundraisers. And we are now being joined by Dee. Hi, Dee.
Hi, Joe. How you doing?
I'm doing great, and we're now being joined by Madeline.
Yay.
Hello, Madeline. So now we're all here. So
Yes,
let
the
me
gang's here.
summarize for you what we've gone through so far. There's an article which is in my description on YouTube that appeared in CNBC in June. And what it discusses, to summarize it, is that a guy by the name of Omid, his last name is Malik. He's a Wall Street executive. He used to be a director, of Bank of America. He's quite wealthy. I don't know if he's a billionaire, but when he left the Bank of America, he made an 8-figure settlement, with that bank, which means it was more than $10 million. Okay, so Malik in June took Bobby Kennedy to a swanky private dinner at the Bellagio in Los Angeles to rub elbows with an array of political power players, according to people familiar with the matter. Attendees at the dinner, which coincided with the Scale Global Business Summit, included, get this, former Secretary of State Hillary Clinton, chief of the neocons in the United States, in my view, former Trump economic advisor Gary Cohn, former Secretary of State Mike Pompeo, who I think is the chief of the neocons on the Republican side here in the United States, ex-UK Prime Minister Boris Johnson, who was certainly the chief of the neocons in England,
Boris Johnson,
former Treasury Secretary Larry Summers,
Oh, my God.
who's the chief of the neoliberal economists, and Democratic mega donor Mark Lassery. Many of the attendees were listed as speakers at the summit. The spokesman for Cohn confirmed his attendance at the dinner, said the gathering included many of the speakers at the summit. There were representatives for Kennedy, Clinton, Pompeo, Summers, and Lassery, who did not return requests for comment about the dinner. A spokesperson for Johnson could not be reached. At this dinner, Kennedy didn't pitch himself as candidate, but his presence was another way to beef up his presence in the political conversation. He's accused here of publicly pushing numerous conspiracy theories, including debunked takes on the vaccines, This conspiracy theory smear against him is a debatable matter still. It's definitely contested and is not consensus fact, except perhaps in the mainstream press that likes to smear candidates other than Joe Biden. His presence at this dinner, though, seemed to indicate some things about the candidacy of Joe Biden. Also, uh, okay, at the dinner, there was some, including Clinton, who suggested that President Joe Biden's age could be a hurdle that he'll need to shrug off to voters. Clinton also cheered on Biden's tenure as president, another person said. He previously said at a Financial Times event in May that Biden's age is an issue and people have every right to consider it. Biden will turn um, um, 82 after next year's general election, while former President Donald Trump will be 78 come November 2024. He also said that his age, I should say Clinton, she also suggested Biden's age could be a hurdle that he'll need to shrug off to voters. So I think that's a little skepticism she's expressing, okay, with respect to Biden. It strikes me part of Kennedy's going to this meeting, or Malik's taking him to this meeting, okay, is that Malik is very aware that there are some people, uh, both among Democratic donors and Republican donors, who think that they might need to have a backup to Joe Biden because he may fall too low in the polls or he may be too ill to continue when the rigors of a campaign actually set in. So they want a backup. Uh, the article says Kennedy has gained little traction in polls, and they cite the Quinnipiac poll in June showing Biden with 70% support among Democrats, while Kennedy had 17% support at that time. We know now that his support there, I think, is a little stronger than that. And as far as approval ratings are concerned, he has higher approval ratings than either Trump or Joe Biden in surveys that ask about the approval ratings of these candidates.
The 70% just of the Democrats who voted, who say they would support Joe Biden. Is that what you read?
Yeah, in other words, that Quinnipiac poll said that 70% of the Democrats would support Joe Biden, okay, in a primary, and only 17% said they would give support to Bobby Kennedy, okay, in a primary. But actually, that 17% was actually a lot, considering at the time he had only recently announced, okay, his candidacy.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, Malik, meanwhile, joins other rich donors in their support for Kennedy. Venture capital David Sachs and fellow tech leader Chamath Palihapitiya hosted a fundraiser for Kennedy this month, according to a tweet by Palihapitiya. The tweet said that, quote, turnout was amazing, unquote. Attendees were Democrats, Republicans, and independents. The event raised approximately $500,000 for Kennedy's campaign, according to another person. Kennedy was also once a guest on Sachs and Palihapitiya's podcast, and billionaire Twitter owner Elon Musk hosted Kennedy in a recent Twitter Spaces. Malik joined that particular discussion. Musk said last year he was leaning towards backing Florida Governor Ron DeSantis for president. He later hosted a glitchy Twitter Spaces for the Florida Republican when he announced his run, okay, for president. So we have here both Musk and Malik giving support both to Kennedy and to DeSantis. So the foot, okay, in both camps, ready to support whichever of them seems to be the one that is going to win. The article also points out that Malik gears up to host fundraisers. Uh, he was also at the time going to host a campaign fundraiser for Kennedy in the Ritzy Hamptons in July, which I believe that came off. He did that. According to those with direct knowledge of the matter, CNBC was also reviewed an invitation to the Sag Harbor gathering. The invitation, which does not name um, 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 Omid Malik, says the event will feature cocktails, hors d'oeuvres, and a dinner featuring a discussion, okay, with Kennedy. Tickets for the gathering are going for $6,600. The max an individual donor can give directly to a campaign. Often, half goes towards the primary account, and the other half goes towards general election pool of funds. Also, a Malik hosted Hamptons event for DeSantis is also in the works for July, according to one of the people. So this guy has his foot in both the camps, certainly. The spokesman for the DeSantis campaign did not return a request for comment. Uh, the article points out Malik himself has donated to candidates on both sides of the aisle. He gave to DeSantis when he ran for re-election in 2022. He gave to Biden's 2020 campaign, and he gave to Donald Trump's failed second run for the White House, according to data from Open Secrets. It says here Malik worked as a managing director at Bank of America until 2018, before a reported controversy, according to the New York Post, led to an 8-figure settlement with the firm that he won. He's created his own lane on Wall Street. He has two firms, 1789 Capital and Farvahar Partners. Post reported that Malik is launching a new fund through 1789 Capital called EIG for entrepreneurship, innovation, and growth. The paper said the fund he's launching, a $150 million fund, is backed by GOP mega donor Rebecca Mercer,
Mm,
the Mercer fortune,
yep.
the Mars bars.
Well, we got the M&M boys over there too. We got Musk
Yeah,
and Mahler.
yeah, Musk and Malik, the M&M boys, right? Very good. Who helped finance Breitbart later, but Cambridge Analytica, and former Republican Arizona Senate candidate Blake Masters, who thankfully lost, who used to work for fellow Republican financier Peter Thiel. So there are connections here to Peter Thiel. So that's the first piece suggesting that Kennedy is in with the big boys for financing, and that in June he had already raised substantial money from them at that particular dinner, in addition to his other fundraising, okay, activities. Now, here's another piece. This one is a Politico piece. Hmm? Oh no, he's raised that money already. Oh, he took it. Yeah, he took it. Uh, so RFK Jr.'s secret fundraising success. Republicans. Okay, political analysis shows donor overlap with DeSantis and Trump supporters, which we were, already seeing. This was on July 15th. 2022. So it's a little later piece. The caption is Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s campaign committee reported raising $6.3 million since his launch in April, according to documents filed with the Federal Election Commission on Saturday. So he just filed that on July 15th. This article is by Jessica Piper. So 6.3 million since his launch. Now, I have to emphasize that doesn't count any super PAC money which has come out for him. But we'll soon learn about that. The top contributors to Robert F. Kennedy Jr.'s presidential campaign included donors who typically give to Republicans according to campaign finance filings, underscoring the extent to which Kennedy, running as a Democrat, is resonating with the other party. Kennedy's campaign committee reported raising $6.3 million since his April launch. He spent $1.8 million after he raised the money and had $4.5 million cash on hand as of June 30th. Some of that money came from donors who have more recently supported Republicans. His campaign raked in at least $100,000 from donors who previously gave to committees associated with Florida Governor Ron DeSantis or former President Donald Trump, according to a Politico analysis of federal and state campaign finance filings. The analysis is based solely on the itemized donations of Kennedy, although he also raised more than $2 million from small dollar donors whose names the campaign does not have to disclose. In other words, they don't have to disclose small dollars that are less than $200. Okay. So those donations were also substantial, not anywhere near as substantial as the other ones. But since crossover giving is unusual, but Kennedy is running on a platform that includes opposition to efforts to vaccinate against COVID-19, which is increasingly resonating with the Republican base. Though there has been an uptick in vaccine skepticism in recent years, the biggest increases tend to be among voters who identify as Republican. Kennedy's also been a frequent guest on Fox News in launching his campaign in April, criticizing Joe Biden on issues including the war in Ukraine and the response to the COVID-19. Excuse me. And the
So,
response to the COVID-19 pandemic. Okay, so among the donors who maxed out donating to Kennedy, despite having recent histories of giving to Republicans, is banking executive Omid Malik. There's that name again. Who Axios reported is hosting separate fundraisers for DeSantis and Kennedy in the Hamptons this summer. So I guess by July 15th, those fundraisers had not yet taken place. But some of Kennedy's top donors had Democratic donation histories or little campaign donation history at all. Other donors who gave at least $3,300, the maximum for the primary cycle to his campaign, included hedge fund giant Bill Ackman, a longtime Democratic donor who has said he favors Kennedy, and also entrepreneur Vivek Ramaswamy, who is running in the GOP primary. But he maxed out his donations to Kennedy. Okay, then it mentions Kennedy is the son of, Robert F. Kennedy and so on, gained prominence in the mid-2000s as a proponent of discredited opposition to all vaccines. I think that's a smear. He gained prominence also for his defense of the environment in various cases at various times. I ought to add, those defenses made him very rich. He has a net worth of roughly $60 million. So he's a very rich man himself. That has to be noted. The article ends by saying he chaired a nonprofit, Children's Health Defense, advocating against common childhood vaccines. I don't know that that is strictly true. The positions I've seen him take on vaccines are there needs to be more research on them, that there is no long term research on many of the vaccines. Okay, the long term effects of them are unknown, and he calls for more research. He says himself that he is not an anti vax person. For example, he himself uh, was thoroughly vaxxed for COVID at the time he announced, and that his children have also been thoroughly vaxxed. So that doesn't sound like a straightforward kind of anti-vaxxer to me, but it may to other people. So the significance of this article is that it again shows that his donors are coming from the Republican ranks, they're coming from the Democratic ranks, but they're coming from the very rich. They are getting him started in this particular campaign. Uh, this will be even more true when we get to some of the independent uh, campaign expenditure funds. They're not actually his campaign, I should say, the super PACs, the independent expenditure funds that have been forming and that have been growing and that are known to support his candidacy. Now, the super PACs are not allowed to coordinate with his campaign, ostensibly, but the FEC is a little lax about that. Super PACs and other campaigns have used various techniques. I should say, other campaigns have used various techniques to communicate with super PACs that support them. In other words, to coordinate with them in various ways. They use, in particular, the red box technique, which was notorious in the Ohio campaign of Nina Turner, where she got beaten by, oh, gee, what's her name again, Dee? Uh,
I can't think of her name.
okay, it'll come to me in a minute or so. She's fairly notorious. Uh, she got to be a member of the Congressional Progressive Caucus so that the CPC would have to support her as opposed to supporting Nina Turner in the second election. They're dealing with the two. So it gave to Jayapal an excuse to support the opposition to Nina Turner in that other campaign, where Jayapal wanted no part of Nina Turner, in the CPC, because I think she rightly perceived that, if Nina Turner won, got into the Congress, that she might become a rival for leadership to Jayapal. But that's another matter. Anyway, this I don't know if I've shared this new article yet, so let me make sure I share it. Sometimes I go on and read articles or go through articles. Uh, Not really without actually sharing them, but let me share this one. So this is, I picked this up at MSN.com, but it's a Politico article. And it was RFK Jr. allied super PAC raked in $6 million in July. So, in other words, there was a total of $8 million that went directly to his campaign committee since he announced, okay, in April. Okay. In addition, there's a super PAC, okay, that's aligned with RFK Jr. that raked in $6 million last month. Okay, and there is Kennedy in his appearance, okay, in Congress, the censorship hearings. Okay, I will make the type larger in this one because it's too small to be seen. Let's see. Okay, there we go. So, the super PAC supporting the presidential ambitions of Robert F. Kennedy raised $6.4 million in July from a mix of major donors from both parties, according to a press release from American Values 2024 on Monday. That's the name of the super PAC, okay, American Values 2024. About 5 million of that haul came during his testimony in front of the House Judiciary Select Subcommittee on the weaponization of the federal government for censorship. So that's interesting. While he was testifying in front of Congress, that super PAC was able to use the conflict and the events to raise $6.47 million. I'm sorry, to raise $5 million. Altogether, they raised $6.47 million, but 5 million of it was raised during his testimony. I think that's amazing. Okay, American Values 2024 boasts the support of former Donald Trump, mega donor, but Tim Mellon, very famous name, Carnegie Mellon, former Secretary of the Treasury, Andrew Mellon back in the 1920s, Democratic Party donor, Abby Rockefeller,
Mm.
and Gavin Becker, a security consultant, an author close to Amazon founder Jeff Bezos, according to the press release, okay, from American Values 2024. So, more billionaires, okay, involved there through a super PAC supporting Bobby Kennedy. The fact that Kennedy gets so much bipartisan support tells me two things: that he's the one candidate who can unite the country and root out corruption, and he's the one Democrat who can win in the general election. Okay, Tim Mellon said that, okay, in a press release. So he's going to root out, okay, the corruption by taking the big donor money and
Mm.
getting the big donor super PAC support, right? He's the one we can trust to root the corruption out. This is very funny. I mean, it's really a riot that Tim Mellon said that.
Well, it's like in one of the Einstein quotes about you can't expect to solve problems by going to the people who created those problems or using that same logic.
Right, and that's exactly what he's doing. And of
Hmm.
course, what he's saying to justify that, he's been asked a question about that, and his response was, of course, the classic: uh, "You can't go to a gunfight with a knife."
Mm.
Okay, so
Mm.
in other words, okay, it's a gunfight. He's got to defend himself. He's got to go with the gun also. But trust him; he's for rooting out the corruption.
Right.
The
That
whole
he's going to take the money. Mm.
The hold by the super PAC underscores the intense, albeit limited, support that Kennedy has received in his long shot run against Joe Biden. The president still has majority support in polling, but Kennedy is not 16% support in the most recent poll of the 2024 primary field conducted by Harvard Harris, and he hit a polling high of 21% in an Emerson College survey this April. But other surveys have shown him trailing by more. Donors see Kennedy's advantage in his bipartisan appeal. The spokesperson for the PAC said to Politico, citing the first-time candidate's high favorability rating in the Harvard Harris survey. Quote, this is the reason why he's the logical best person to be the nominee, because he takes votes away from Trump, unquote. Why does that indicate he's taking votes away from Trump?
Yeah, it's a non sequitur, huh?
Yeah, that's ridiculous. That doesn't mean it. I mean, he may be getting votes from the anti-Trump people in the Republican Party. Probably that's the truth of it.
And
He's getting votes from the Lincoln Project people.
do you think this is another reason why he walked back his initial comments on Israel, Palestine, and Roger Waters?
I think there's definitely a connection there. His outrageous comments on Israel recently, I think, probably have to do with the fact that he's been getting in with the neocons who very strongly support Israel.
Yeah.
And he's sort of signaling. He's signaling strongly that, of course, his policies towards Israel are going to be very much consonant with the. In other words, that nothing significant, nothing fundamental will change.
Where did we hear that recently?
Hear that, right? At least with respect to Israel.
And that was actually a campaign promise that Joe Biden kept.
Exactly.
Right. Is that the only one he kept? It may be the only one he kept. Because he takes votes away from Trump, said the spokesperson, who was granted anonymity to provide more context on the financial filings. Quote, he isn't viewed as a partisan hack. He's viewed as a truth teller, unquote. Well, that's nice, but how can we tell that? He didn't tell the truth about Israel, did he?
Not at all.
The press release came the same day that American Values 2024, which was founded by Tower Research Capital CEO Tony Lyons and Mark Gorton, president of Skyhorse Publishing, said the Super PAC will file to the Federal Elections Commission that it raised about $9.8 million in the first 6 months of 2023. So they've got $10 million to support him if they want to send that. I read somewhere also that they expect to, we'll see as we go through these, but I think they're expecting to raise over $100 million after a while. Quote, we Democrats sorely need a candidate people can be enthusiastic about, DeBecker said in the release. Quote, someone brave enough to tell the truth, someone who understands our regulatory agencies because he has litigated against their corruption for years. Lyons said in the release that the Super PAC's best day of fundraising came the day of Kennedy's appearance before the South Subcommittee, in which he was invited to testify on the topic of social media censorship on July 20th. Numerous House Democrats called for the presidential candidate to be uninvited, pointing to comments he had made suggesting Jewish and Chinese people were less likely to be harmed by COVID-19. Yeah, that was a smear. They really smeared him on those grounds. But I suppose he can thank Debbie Wasserman Schultz and Stacey Plaskett for the best day of fundraising his Super PAC had.
Yeah, trying to censor him at a censorship hearing. Yeah.
at a censorship hearing. Kennedy has denied charges at a censorship hearing where they were attempting to censor him. Kennedy has denied charges that he was promoting an anti Semitic trope, instead, insisting he was sharing research around genetically engineered bioweapons. By the way, that was true. That's what he was sharing. He has accused Democrats who criticize him of censorship. The campaign also sent out several fundraising emails centered on his testimony. The campaign will next disclose its fundraising haul in October, and the Super PAC will next have to report its finances at the end of the year. Oh, that's going to give them a lot of time to raise a lot more money. Quote, when the American people understand that the Biden administration has used the government to illegally censor RFK Jr., target him with false accusations, illegally attack him in the White House press room, and deny him routine protection, they will voice their opposition to those un-American actions by donating more money to that candidate and the super PAC supporting him, unquote, Lyons said in the press release. So I think that super PAC information is very, very interesting to say the least. Obviously, it's a super PAC that's raising very substantial amounts of money from the rich people. If you take his direct campaign contributions and the contributions to the super PAC, he's already running at about what, maybe, okay, 8 million for the campaign, okay, another 10 million are going for the super PAC. People supporting him have raised a total of $18 million in a very short period of time. So he looks like he's going to be well funded, um, um, certainly. So I'm going to move to what I believe is the final article in this particular set. It's all I was able to find today in trying to rustle this stuff up. I'm sure there are more articles that I haven't been able to get. This also was something Microsoft pick up, which is where I get it, where I got it. Super PAC supporting the presidential ambitions of long-shot Democratic presidential candidate Robert F. Kennedy Jr. reported receiving more than half, it's nearly $10 million in funds from a single GOP donor. So that's new information. We don't know at this point who that particular donor is. Maybe we'll learn during this article. Donations underscore that while Kennedy enjoys the surname of Democratic royalty, his message is also resonating with Republicans. The group American Values 24 launched the same month Kennedy set out on its own long-shot bid against President Joe Biden in the primary. Well, the other article said that American Values launched in January. So there seems to be a contradiction here with them suggesting, this article suggesting that they must have launched in April. It officially reported raising $9.8 million through the end of June and said on Monday that it had also raised $6 million in the month of July, bringing its total fundraising to roughly $16 million. And then there's also the other $8 million that was raised by the campaign through the end of July. So that's $24 million. That is really big money for a campaign just starting out.
It's interesting, too, Joe, how both of these articles use the words long shot campaign. It's so typical of media like this to, for whatever reason, in whatever case, and I'm not, you know, it just sounds so familiar. To downplay this person who's raising millions of dollars.
Right, and of course they call him a long shot, but still, uh, the statement of information that he's raised
Yes.
much money, I mean, very early in the campaign, suggests that he might not be that much of a long shot after all.
Yes, exactly.
In other words, they're basing the long shot thing on simply on the fact that Biden, okay, is the incumbent. I mean,
And that's 7. Mhm.
yeah, he doesn't have anything else going for him, and
Nope.
that may not be enough in the current situation because it seems to be losing support by the month, and more questions about his health surfacing by the month.
Yep.
Its first financial report, which covers contributions through the end of June, includes donations from both GOP and Democratic donors, but the donors who have previously backed Republicans accounted for a much greater share of the money raised. That, okay, is interesting. Of the 9.8 million reported, 5 million came from Timothy Mellon. So there it is, specific to what um, um, Timothy Mellon gave. um, 5 million. Now, he couldn't have given the 5 million to the campaign because that's prohibited. So the 5 million from him was given to the super PAC.
And is that a member of the Mellon, the Carnegie Mellon?
Oh yeah, oh yeah,
Yeah, okay.
yeah. He's
Big
tied
money.
to the Mellon fortune, right? The long-time GOP donor gave 1.5 million to the Trump-aligned group last fall, according to campaign finance records. In a press release earlier on Monday, Mellon touted Kennedy's bipartisan credentials, calling him the one Democrat who can win in the general uh, um, uh, election. Uh, well, I would say of all the candidates who have announced thus far, he may be the one Democrat who can win. However, there are only a few Democrats who have so far announced. There's Joe Biden, okay, Marianne Williamson, and Bobby Kennedy. I'm not aware of anybody else who's a Democrat, okay, who's announced. So, uh, if he's basing it on who's announced, I don't think that is saying much. Okay, I think that if Gavin Newsom decides he's going to announce, you'll soon see a flood of money in his corner. A flood, okay, of big money. Most of the rest of the super PAC's fundraising came through the end of June came from Gavin DeBecker, an author and consultant who reported giving the group $4.5 million. So we're looking at 5 million from Mellon. Is that what they said? 5 million from Mellon and 4.5 million from Gavin DeBecker. That's the together. That's 9.5 million.
And do you know anything more about Gavin DeBecker than what's said in this article?
Nope, I don't.
Mm, me neither.
Okay, but that's between the two of them. That's 9.5 million out of the 16 million that was raised by the super PAC. Phew. So the super PAC also got Smaller contributions from a handful of Democratic donors, including Abby Rockefeller, who gave $100,000. But those contributions accounted for only a small share of the super PAC's total fundraising. Super PAC also reported receiving $50,000 from Cancer Monthly Incorporated, a publication that touts alternative cancer treatments such as vitamins. Okay, American Values 2024 has reported spending on newspaper advertisements in early primary states, although it is largely holding on to cash so far. The super PAC's backing from a major GOP donor will likely further Democratic arguments that Kennedy is not aligned with the party's goals. Top donors who gave directly to Kennedy's campaign in the first few months also included dozens of individuals who had previously given money to Trump or DeSantis, according to a Politico analysis of campaign finance filing. So this suggests the rap against Kennedy is going to be that he's a Republican in disguise, and that all these Republicans are giving him dough, and they're trying to sabotage the primary, okay, the Democratic primary, by giving him all this money. So he is going to face that kind of charge, okay, because the Republicans are so visible, and they're going to reply by saying he has bipartisan support. That makes him a really wonderful candidate. If you're bipartisan, you should be for him. So, from my point of view, what this means is that what Kennedy is doing is he's going to the same sources of funds, tapping the same well as all of the other major candidates, okay, in the campaign. His may be coming from contributors to both parties, but as we know, what we really have in the United States is a uniparty system. So the fact that he's getting from both parties is not necessarily in his favor. What counts here more than anything else is that he's basing his campaign on the mega donors, at least so far. He has $2 million in small dollar donations, but he evidently doesn't have a ground game right now, which is generating contributions from small donors. Okay. And I also, from personal experience, can say that he doesn't have one because I have never received a fundraiser from him. So he's not doing the usual thing for small dollar donation, which is to, send a lot of email out. He is nothing like the operation that Katie Porter has, okay, or AOC has, to raise small dollar donations. At least he doesn't have that yet. It remains to be seen. Yeah, Robert Copeland, Chantel Brown. I don't think you misspelled her name. I think you're quite right. Chantel Brown is the congressperson who had two victories over Nina Turner and had, of course, the benefit of much big money against her coming in at the last stage of the campaign in the form of donations from super PACs.
She was a loyal Clinton person, so.
Yes, she was a loyal establishment person and had charges of corruption against her at the time. So the establishment thought she must be one of ours because she was corrupt to start out with. So anyway, there it is. He doesn't pass our litmus test right from the get-go. So from the point of view of our litmus test, from the point of view of the rule, we would have to vote against him. So we're still looking for candidates who are going to follow the rule. And once again, to review the rule, and I'll share the screen for that also. We review the rule around here very frequently, Madeline. The rule: vote against every candidate except those who won't take money from wealthy corporations, individuals, political action committees, or party committees, and who repudiate all super PAC support.
Ding, 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 ding.
That doesn't
Failure.
Robert Kennedy. It's a failure. He's a big failure. He's a big failure thus far.
Yes.
Now, he can change. He can quit taking the big money and
Mm.
rely only on small dollar donations for the major part of his campaign. But if he doesn't change, then the recommendation we make is you have to vote against him. You have to find a candidate, okay, from whatever party who most closely shares the policy issues you favor,
Mm.
and who also doesn't take any of the big money.
Be,
The most likely place you will find such a candidate is in the Green Party of America, I have to say.
That's
Mhm.
true.
There may be some other parties uh, where this will happen as well, but I also have to say the No Labels Party is not one of them. They've been based uh, on millionaire and billionaire donations since their inception, which I believe was in 2011 or 2012, if memory serves me.
I just want to say, Robert Copeland has the question. Didn't Chantel Brown get money from APAC? Yes, she did. She had the lobby following. She was getting money from the
Yes,
lobby.
she got a lot of money from APAC. I think she got money from UDP. She got a lot of money from the DMFI, which is the Democratic Majority for Israel.
Mm.
That super PAC was one of her main supporters, and that's why she won. And they came in at the end of both campaigns with very big money in the last 2 weeks to push her out.
Mm.
Okay, she herself raised a lot of money, but most of that money was raised in small donations, and she was very effective in raising this, the small donations. But generally speaking, she didn't save her small donations until the end to flood the airways, okay, with the small donations. She was actually pretty competitive in total fundraising, but her strategy was a little different, and she was not ready for the super PAC donations that came in at the last minute, okay, in order to beat her.
And to see what money, if any, RFK Jr. has taken from APAC or NORPAC or any of the pro-Israel lobbies, I guess we'd have to wait till the next filing,
We have to wait
because
probably
those.
for the next filing, but I predict that given his conferences with Jimmy Dore, okay, and Rabbi Shady, that we can probably expect that he's going to be getting very substantial contributions from those sources, both going to the super PAC associated with him and also his campaign as well. Okay. But of course, the campaign donations have to be much smaller than the super PAC donations, which can be huge. There are no limits on the donations from the super PAC. Okay, so if DMFI suddenly wants to give him $20 million in a contribution, they can do that. And there's nothing to stop him.
And good night, Kay. Kay was saying that she's losing power. She's in and out of
Hey,
power.
Kay, good night. We love you, Kay. Steve Wolbrand says good night, Kay.
I'm going to say goodnight to you both. This was very informative for me.
Thank you very
Thank
much,
you.
Madeline. It was a pleasure to have you here.
Yeah,
I'll
it
be
was good
back.
seeing you again, Madeline.
I'll be back again at some point. Good night, all.
And
Okay.
good night, Madeline.
I did want to tell her, she may want to come uh, to the Tuesday programs on the international system.
Yes.
She may, find herself agreeing with a lot of that, and also have some very good views to add to it as well.
Yes.
So, Dee, what was your take on this?
You know, when people say they're getting run, and we were happy to hear, with RFK in the beginning, and and he had such momentum behind him until till that whole thing with Israel, and that kind of hit you, saying, well, he's kind of a pack type of person. You could see he's trying to get money from all different organizations and stuff. It kind of put him into that category, and tonight we saw that he is in that category with the people that he's associating with.
Yes, I think you're right. We saw that, and we're guessing, but we think we will see that he's going to get big money from the Israeli lobby now.
Oh, he is. Oh,
Okay,
the stuff he said made no sense.
That's not going to stop them from supporting Joe Biden too. But the support for Bobby Kennedy, of course, will be a gain for him because Joe Biden was going to get that support anyway.
Right.
Okay, so it would be a gain for him to get that kind of big support. We also have to note now that his lack of support, for Medicare for all, his temporizing on the issue, and his fooling around with the notion of the public option, and
Hmm.
even more, with the notion of, well, he said that he's for fighting the chronic diseases we're all subject to, and he brought forth a statistic, that 80%, of uh, 80% of the things we treat, in the medical care area, are chronic diseases. Only 20% are from non-chronic diseases. Now, I don't know where he got that or where the categorization actually comes from. I suppose it's probably accurate, but we may not agree with it based on the categorization. His claim, he's sort of saying he's more interested in this than the particular type of insurance. That the more important factor is having government spend big to get rid of, these diseases, the chronic diseases. And he implies that we're now spending $4.3 trillion. He's accurate about that, of course. He knows his figure there. Uh, and he's sort of implying that we could cut that back by maybe 80% by getting rid of the chronic diseases.
Right.
Uh, I don't think the two are so easily translatable because, first of all, we don't know how much of the money that's being spent on healthcare is being spent on the chronic diseases.
And the one thing we do know too is that when different countries with the foods, different countries, they don't use the same ingredients. They ban a lot of things in their food that the US keeps in the food. So there is this sense that they want people to be sick because it benefits the healthcare industry or the doctors or whoever is profiting off of sick people.
Oh, yeah. I think some of the countries of Europe, of course, generally food in Europe is much more healthy, than in the United States, because they monitor things much more closely there. And so that, of course, may account for part of the reason why they're spending less and why their life expectancies are much higher than here. But, of course, uh, to specify a single cause and say that's it,
Mm-hmm.
okay, is far too simple within the healthcare area because they all have some kind of universal healthcare system, okay, over in Europe.
Yes, because we've seen that in Canada, yeah, and everybody that has the system.
It's
They ban
spending
a lot of
far
stuff.
less per person than we are here and has much better outcomes, generally speaking, than we have here. So it may be due to both of the universal healthcare system and also the fact that they've gotten rid of many of the chronic diseases over there because of what they're doing in their healthcare system. But also,
Exactly.
the two causes are not mutually exclusive. Okay, in other words, they might have gotten rid of many of the chronic diseases because they have a universal healthcare system.
Right,
Okay,
and they're not feeding the people stuff that they know that are poison that's going to get them sick. And even with makeup, there's ingredients that are not allowed in the makeup and skincare over in
yes,
Europe and Canada and different places, and here they allow it.
absolutely true, Dee. Absolutely true. Okay, but also, okay, I do want to emphasize that the improvements in their health compared to what we have over a period of time, we're looking at time periods here, okay, and we're looking at gradual improvement in their life expectancies as compared to the United States. I went over that a couple of nights ago, okay, or maybe yesterday even. Okay, I forget, but there was this
Mhm.
article that showed that uh, we are, as far as developed nations are concerned, we are at the bottom with respect to life expectancy and outcomes here. We're now down to something like 73 years for males and 78 years for females in life expectancy this year. Okay, so we're way down compared to the other countries. Uh, okay, it may be that having a universal healthcare system, being free to go to the doctor, okay, at any time, being free to seek consultation from doctors, okay, at any time, uh, is a very big factor, okay, in people getting rid of the chronic diseases they normally have. And the implication of what he's saying is that the way the healthcare system is funded and the way people are covered, okay, or are not covered, is not as significant as the chronic diseases we have. I think that that kind of implication is a silly implication. Those two things have to be related. And it may be that if we don't go to Medicare for all ourselves, that we will never cut into the spending by curing by chronic diseases here. If you find out how to cure those diseases and the health care required to cure it is not available to many middle class people and poor people, you're certainly not going to cut your spending down by very much. Okay, so essentially, what I favor is we know that the spending on healthcare will be cut in half or close to half or by a third, somewhere between a third and a half, if we get a Medicare for all bill through. The reason why we know that is that's happened in other countries that are like ourselves, like New Zealand, Canada. Okay, I won't even say, okay, the UK. Okay. Oh, Australia. Okay, I forgot to mention. Those three countries are very like us, okay, in culture. And they're spending 2/3 to a half of what we are spending per person, okay, on healthcare. So we know the change in system is going to cut that cost curve right down, okay, at the start. We don't know that working on how to cure, okay, the chronic diseases is going to have the same kinds of effects. That's a theory. That's not something yet supported by empirical evidence. So, to my mind, Bobby Kennedy is um, speculating about that. I'm all for going after the chronic disease stuff, but let's get Medicare for all in there first, and then work on, okay, the
Yes.
chronic disease stuff. Because we know the Medicare for all is going to improve our situation. It's going to cut, okay, our costs. And if he's right about the chronic diseases, then as we work on them, which is going to take years, as we work on them, we will have already cut down the costs.
Sure, they already know about the chronic disease already. The point is, it's about profit.
Yep. The point is, we need to get the profit out of the system. It doesn't belong in the healthcare system.
Hmm.
If we do that, we're going to improve the outcomes. And we're probably going to greatly improve our situation with the chronic diseases also.
Oh, definitely.
Steve Wolfbrand correctly says drug overdoses and obesity are probably skewing our life expectancy. Couldn't agree more, Steve. That's certainly true. Okay, Steve says to Robert, respect. And Robert had said, Tuesdays are the worst night for me listening to Joe Firestone is I attend Sacramento City Council meetings, which are on Tuesday. Now, I'm sorry to hear that, Robert. I don't know, maybe I should change my Tuesday day to Thursday and do neoliberalism on Tuesday and do international on Thursday. I don't know. I'll see. uh, so, did we miss anything? Andy Candy said, now, if Biden were half as sharp as you are for your age bracket, then he'd be reelected. Uh,
Mm,
okay, I'll tell you one thing. If I had been elected president in 2020, I would have delivered that $2,000 check. And I would have delivered on the $15 an hour. Very quickly, I would have kept a raft of my promises very quickly. And I would have made it clear to any of the people in the Senate, okay, and the House who wanted to go slow on those things or to temper them, okay, or to vote against them, that if they did that, they would incur my enduring um, opposition, and that I would move to get them out of office as quickly as possible. In other words, I would have tried to exert party discipline on those people from the get-go, and I would have been really nasty about it. I can tell you that. I would have tried to do my best imitation, okay, of Franklin D. Roosevelt. Unfortunately, the president is not in the position to deny them post offices anymore. Okay, that's what he did. If people bucked him, he said, "No post offices for you, buddy." Post offices were very big in those days. And Steve says, so much respect for Robert's political activism. If everyone was like that, it would be a different world. It would be a different world, Steve, but also it's not simply the activism, it's the activism in the service of the right thing. The right thing right now, $15 an hour is not enough to live on. And yes, I probably would have asked for more, okay, if I were the president. Just saying. If I had become the president and I had made that promise, and as he made that promise, I would have delivered on the promise right out of the gate. Okay, but I agree that's not enough to live on. And I probably would have promised more if I had been running for president and also delivered more if I'd been running for president. But that's a different thing. Uh, okay, what else was I about to say about that? Yeah, I was about to say the most important political activism we can do right now is the dump the corruption stuff. It really is. We need to break both of these parties. You're not going to break it by saying vote for a third party, because then everybody's going to start arguing about what are the chances for third parties. What's right with this candidate? And oh, they don't really like Cornel West because he's this and he's that and he's the other thing. They don't care for the libertarian candidate. If we want to make change, we can't get into those arguments. We know what's corrupting the whole system is the big money. That's the thing. We got to get rid of that. Activism in the service of getting rid of that is the most important activism that we can have. Having said that, though, Robert, I certainly agree with you. $15 an hour is not enough. I wouldn't have campaigned on $15 an hour. I would have campaigned on, well, what I would have campaigned on is what I've often said. I take the lowest cost of living, okay, in the United States, according to the CPI, and there would be a minimum cost of living, okay, in that area corresponding to a particular wage per hour. And that would be the bottom of the minimum wage for the United States. And then in every other local area in the United States, there would be a cost adjustment corresponding to the CPI of that area divided by the CPI of that area divided by the CPI, okay, of the lowest area, and you multiply that by okay, the living wage, okay, in the lowest area. So let's say that $15, that there is an area inside the United States where $15 an hour would suffice. I'm not sure there is, but for the sake of argument, let's say there is. Then that would be $15 an hour in that area. Every place else in the United States, every other local area would be adjusted by some factor greater than one. So, for example, uh, let's say the cost of living, okay, in Alaska is 3 times what the cost of living is, okay, in a lower cost area. That would mean that the minimum wage in Alaska would be $45 an hour as opposed to the $15 an hour. There would be a great range in the middle of the minimum wage depending on the cost of living in the individual areas. Steve Wolfbrand said, have you seen Jimmy's interview with Marianne Williamson? Yes, I did. I did see that. And Steve says, OMG, oh my God, it's all over in the media. Yeah, I know, it is all over in the media. He really smoked her out. He did a terrific job in smoking her out. And I think that she's got a problem. I think her problem is she's been playing around, with progressive uh, kinds of rhetoric and values, but she doesn't really ever commit to any specifics about what she would be for. She's extremely mushy on the Israel Palestine question. Uh, she's just, what kind of terminology can I use, okay, in order to describe her? She's all very spiritual. She's got to be a lot more political in terms of the politics of it and tell us what she's for on a broad range of issues. And I'll say this for Robert Kennedy, he's introduced, okay, a number of other issues into this campaign. And we need to be talking about those issues too. I mean, I don't see her talking about the regulatory issues at all. I think that's because she doesn't know anything about the regulatory issues. I don't think she knows a lot about foreign policy. I think Marianne Williamson is unfit to be president. And I've thought so from the first. Robert Copeland says California has a ballot measure next year to try to raise the minimum wage to $18 an hour. That, Robert, is too low for California. And you know it. I mean, the cost of living in California compared to the lowest cost area in the United States it's got to be maybe twice the cost of living of the cheapest area inside the United States. The minimum wage for California has got to be $30 an hour. I mean, $18 an hour is not enough. Wouldn't people all rush to cities paying higher living wages? Not if they could make it in their particular areas. If there were truly living wages in their local areas, they would think twice about rushing to cities where the living wages are higher, but the cost of living is higher. In other words, what good is doubling the minimum wage if your housing costs increase by 4 times? In other words, that's not going to be good for you. When people and Steve Wolfbrand says, and this is the question, not really, Andy. You need at least $30 per hour here in Los Angeles just to survive. I think so. I have a daughter who lives in Los Angeles also. She doesn't have any trouble surviving. She has a very, very good job there. But still, I mean, she's not rolling in dough, even though she has a very good job there. Expenses are very high. And since her location is not important to what she earns, she works for a very large company. And she can be anywhere in the United States. She started out here in Washington working for this company. And when she decided to move to Los Angeles, she still kept the same job. Now she's considering maybe coming back to the East Coast somewhere because the cost of living is lower and her salary will go further. Andy Canny says she's just esoteric. Joe, I agree with you about $18 an hour is too low. Andy Candy says, thanks, Joe and Steve. Robert Copeland says, people are leaving the Bay Area to live in Sacramento and cities east of Sacramento due to rental cost. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that's true. I'm sure that some people who live, okay, in LA, okay, are moving out to the desert, okay, east of LA, because the cost of living, okay, is lower there. And we know that a lot of people moved out of California to Texas because the cost of living is so much lower in Texas. I'm not sure they made a wise choice.
No.
Okay, because I mean, unless the political system changes in Texas, they were all going to boil there with no government to make it easier or to support them because they just got a terrible political system there. Okay, guys, thank you for the discussion. I really enjoyed it tonight. Hope you enjoyed this program. I hope you enjoyed it, Dee.
Yes, I did. You
Uh,
know, we go through this all the time. Like I said, with Kennedy, people were excited, and you get through the candidate, and you're like, he's with the
yeah, well,
rest of
what
them.
happens then is they sound good when they get started, then they get practical, and they think,
Yeah.
how the hell am I going to raise all this money to compete, okay, with Joe Biden? And they just think that to rely on small dollars is just too risky. There are 150 reasons why they think that can't be done. And I have to say, they don't have the courage of Bernie Sanders, who mostly relied on small dollars. And he did raise, by the time he left his primary campaign, he had raised $212 million. When did he quit the primary campaign? In May, wasn't it? So, it was, he left the campaign really pretty early. But he had raised enough money in the campaign to be competitive. He didn't lose to Joe Biden because of the money factor. He lost to Joe Biden because all the other candidates uh, ganged up on him at the last minute, okay, in Texas. And his chance to win there, simply evaporated. And, his momentum was gone based on North Carolina and Super Tuesday. And Steve says, thank you and good night. And he also says, anything is better than Biden, okay, in my opinion. Yeah, I mean, as I said on Tuesday, Biden, well, maybe I said it yesterday, I can't. They tend to blend into each other, okay, but I pointed out in no uncertain terms that Biden has subjected us to the risk, okay, of nuclear war, which is something that Trump did not do during his presidency. Trump, subjects us to dictatorship, and that, okay, is awful. But are we really saying better dead than red? I mean, what's going on here? Uh, I mean, worse is dead, and we
Mm-hmm.
don't want to have the risk of that. And Biden has exposed us to that risk. Okay? And in a situation where we have no military advantage. I mean, he's not only a weasel, he's as dumb as a skunk.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not sure that skunks are dumb, are they, Dee?
I don't think so, but I get your point.
It's just a phrase.
Yeah.
Okay, folks, I think we're going to say goodnight.
Yes. Good night.
So,
And for those watching later, please hit the like button, subscribe, and share.
and please buy us coffees already.
Exactly, right? I'm thirsty. I love my coffee.
We need some coffees. And I need some Patreon support. So please do.
Yes, thank you and
Thank
good night.
you
And good
very
night, Bonnie.
much. Yes. Good night, Bonnie.
Good night.
Okay. Good night, Dee.
Good night.
Bye.